Hi there guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome back to another adult story time with me, your host. So you might have noticed that I was away for a week. I was actually just making more content for you guys so that I could hopefully upload a little bit more than once a week, just to give you guys a little bit more story time if it's been something that you've been enjoying. So with all that said, let's get into this week's story, which is called The Vines. I take a few steps towards a black cast iron gate. The pointed tips spiral away from the grounds of a mansion, planning their escape. I look up to survey the building. Rich green leaves hanging on winding vines blanket the jagged masonry, and dusted window frames hide behind them. The vines, full of vitality, contrasted with the grey, temperamental sky in the backdrop. The grounds are unkempt, and the more I look at them, the more chaos grows in my mind. The forgotten structure seems to groan as the wind battles against the stone walls. It whistles through an open window and steals my attention. I look back down at the gate, adorned with thick silver chains and a sturdy lock. I think about taking out the bolt cutters from my rucksack, but decide against it. For reasons unknown. Can't go under it, can't go through it, we've got to go over it. I pull myself up to the top of the gate, which stood about a foot higher than my head, and carefully placed one leg over and then the next, praying at this moment that I wouldn't lose my footing. When my second leg joined the first, I hopped off the gate and made my way towards the open window with vigour. Arriving at the window, I noticed a lace curtain flapping on the inside of the pane. It was a little dusty around the edges from the dirt brought in with the wind. Although dusty, it had no holes and looked quite new. This perplexed me a little, as I thought this house had been empty since the early 1900s. I picked up the open edge of the window and rolled it up until there was a space big enough for me to fit through. I slid my backpack through first, and when it dropped to the floor on the other side, I followed. As I stepped onto the varnished floor and into what looked like a living room, I felt distinctly warm. Putting this down to how cold it was outside, I took a step forward and surveyed the grand drawing room that stood in front of me. Paintings of landscapes and floral arrangements adorned the walls in rusted gold frames, and a large handcrafted table sat solitary in the middle of the room. A pale blue and pink rug filled up most of the floor, and I reached down to my right side to pick up my backpack. I looked back to where I came through the window. My bag wasn't there at all. Thinking it may have rolled away somewhere when I pushed through the window, I got on my hands and knees to look under and around the old wooden furniture in the room. The door on the far side of the room was open so that I could see straight through to the lobby. It couldn't have rolled that far, could it? On my hands and knees, I took a closer look at the worn rug under my hands. It seemed clean, for a house that hadn't been touched in almost 100 years. I crawled over to a grapefruit that stood against the side wall and looked underneath it, giving me a clear view straight through the open door to the lobby. I heard tapping on the marble floor on the other side of the door when a set of shoes came into view. They flitted across the floor and I jumped up to hide my body behind the chest that I was looking under. I looked through again, curious and absolutely terrified, and saw a pair of brown leather dress shoes wandering through the hall. My body flitted with anxiety and my palms sweating. I sat in silence, hoping that the sound of my breath didn't break through the tension. As the shoes clicked slowly, delaying, I wondered how quickly I could get back out of the window. It was a couple of meters away, but I could probably jump through it. The footsteps became louder as I sensed someone edging closer to me. My attention was lost for a second as the room became warmer still. What was that? I looked to the window, watching the lace curtain dance in the wind and knowing that the cold breeze was coming through, never actually reaching me. As I turned my attention back to the footsteps, I realised that they had stopped, and standing in front of me, in a grey three-piece suit, was a pale, well-groomed, middle-aged man, whose face distorted like smoke as though blowing in the wind. I stood up slowly, back glued to the wall, and stared for a moment. The face seemed to smile, and a well-to-do voice said, "Marvellous! I'm so glad you're here." I looked the figure up and down for a moment, unsure if this was a taunt or a genuine welcome. My face was burning hot as he edged a little closer. I realised he was the reason that this old house, that must be full of drafts, was warm. "Where's my bag?" I asked gently, just hoping that whatever otherworldly or drug-induced event was happening to me right now wasn't about to go south. "It's in the study, my dear. I thought we'd take tea in there. The sun shines on the back of the house in the afternoon." I blinked. Just as well I didn't have any plans today. "Okay," I said, curious, as he ushered me towards the open doorway to the lobby. I walked ahead, suddenly remembering my grandfather and how he always walked behind and let all his girls go first, no matter your age. I wandered into the lobby and my breath swept out of my lungs as I looked up to see a stained glass dome with sunlight streaming through it. The colours lit up against the white walls below and threw a masterpiece on every surface. I looked back at the man's floating face, which smiled back at me gently. As I continued to walk through a small doorway to my right, I came to a small room with sunlight streaming through a single window. A leather-bound desk and a high-backed chair were illuminated in the sunlight, and the walls were covered in books almost completely. As I ventured in, a small table was set up with 2 low chairs either side of it, and on the table was a teapot and 2 small china cups. "Take a seat," he said, pointing to the chair in the corner of the room. As I walked over to sit down, twice as fast he walked around the room to pull the chair out for me. My rucksack sat behind the chair, propped up in the corner. Although a little worried I was slowly losing my mind, I felt at home here, as though just another annex of my parents' house in the country. I cast my eyes over the cornucopia of books teeming from the walls when one caught my eye. "That's an old copy of Alice in Wonderland," I said, barely being able to read the title on the tattered edge. "An original copy, Anna," he said in a satisfied tone. "What? How do you—" I was trying to say, "know my name," but the word shrugged away from me as he smiled widely. "I make a point to always learn the names of my visitors before they reach the front door, or in your case, the front window." I stared at him blankly. "On this occasion, you've done me the same courtesy, Anna. You already know my name." I looked closer at him. He seemed to have a head of thick curly hair and a strong jaw, but I still didn't recognise him. He got up from the table and walked over to the bookshelf where I saw Alice in Wonderland. As he returned and stretched out his hand to pass me the book, the walls evaporated and the chair fell from underneath me. Sun still shining bright, I looked down at my little legs outstretched on a bed of green grass, wearing a blue sundress my mum used to dress me in. When I looked down at my hands, they were little and soft, half the size of my adult hands, and when I looked back up, I saw my aged grandfather looking down at me. Surrounded by lush green fields and a picnic basket, he handed me the book and said, "We're all met here, Anna." So, if you're still here, thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you liked this video, and I will be looking forward to welcoming you back for another adult story time next week. Bye guys.